Okay, good morning everybody. We're now formally live. Welcome to the sixth and final Citizens Assembly meeting on drugs. Welcome to you, all the members. Welcome to our facilitators, some observers we have today, and indeed everybody who may be watching online through our webcast. You're all very welcome. In my view, this is a very momentous weekend overall. It is because it's a very momentous weekend in terms of what you, the members, have deliberated on over the past nearly 7 months at this stage. And during that process and during that time, you will have received presentations from almost 150 people. You will have received 800 submissions. You have had over 200 hours of deliberations at your table. And it is, as I've said, this is our sixth Assembly meeting to discuss the whole issue of drug use. And it's quite a momentous weekend because we have listened to, in that period, a wide range of presenters presented to us, from academics, lawyers, barristers, people in the statutory services and Garda Síochána, people in health provisions, community voluntary sectors, and importantly, people with lived experiences of the whole issue of drug use from individuals, families and communities. So we've listened to a wide range of presenters. We've heard people who've set out, in their view, some of the wide-ranging harm that has been caused by drugs, and we've had presentations from people who believe that many people use certain type drugs and don't receive harm. So we've listened to all ends of the spectrum. I guess the challenge for us as members of the Assembly over this weekend is to decide on what end of the spectrum we recommend forward to government across the three areas that we have a mandate to recommend on, which is legislation, policy and services. And across that spectrum, we've a kind of decisions to make over the weekend, which has to be made in terms of our approach is, do you go for evolution or do you go for revolution in terms of our approach and what we recommend? And that's entirely in your hands in terms of that element of the spectrum, and trying to think and consider how do we make the best recommendations that can get traction in government, that can get implemented, and that can reduce the various kinds of harm that can be caused by drug use. And that's the mandate that we have. So we have to think along that spectrum throughout everything that we're thinking today. Is it evolution or is it revolution? Or indeed, is it the status quo? And that's all the options that are open to us today. So there'll be many challenging calls that we have to make during the course of our balloting process. But what I will say to you is remain very confident in those challenging calls, because in my view, you are probably some of the best informed people in the country at this stage in terms of the whole issue of drug use. What you have absorbed, what you have listened to, what you've considered, what you've deliberated, what you've debated over the past 6-7 months is unprecedented. So you are well informed. You are as confident, you're as capable of making judgment calls on this as anybody is in the country. So remain confident throughout that whole process. Process for this weekend is going to be very different and very challenging for me as chairperson. So no agenda, no time frames. It's awful, terrible, isn't it? But it's going to be very fluid and it's going to be very engaging. And we're going to work with you. We're going to build the confidence of everybody, all of us, as we walk through this process. So it's going to be a lot more fluid. There's times as chair that I will have to make calls with you. I might have to test a room on something. I might have to have a show of hands, and we'll work through that process as we get through. I might have to test a room. Do you think we should have another ballot on X or Y? And we'll test a room on such an issue. And it's not just for a majority I'll be looking for. It's, look, is there a reasonable number of people in the room think we should test something else? And we'll work it through like that. So bear with me as we go through the process, and I will test at various stages. What I will say in terms of the process, and Carl will go into it a little bit more detail now, and particularly as we get into the first balloting process, is please try and remain focused on the big headline issue, and you'll see this as we get to it, the big headline issue that you are balloting on. So the big question that you're voting yes, no, or unsure on. Just remain focused on that. There's a lot of subtext and a lot of further information that tries to give a bit of context to that big recommendation. And you will have time later, as we come to write the report, trust us that you will have time to feed into the report if you want to further emphasise something, or you think there's something we could reference that you've heard during the process you want stated. We will have time to go back to it again. So what I will ask you today and urge you to try stick your thinking and your debate and your deliberations to the big headline recommendation that you're deliberating on and that you're going to vote on. Let's not try get drawn in deep as should we put an and in there or a comma or an extra sentence. That will do later. But do please give time to make sure that you're happy with the substance. And you will see as we go through the process a lot of live editing based on your feedback as we go through things today. So you'll be very engaged throughout the process. So yeah, please do try stick with the big headline issue and don't get too lost in some of the detail. We will, and we'll go through the agenda, we'll go through the workings of today. We will start with the more complex issue that we've grappled with over the past while, which is the mandate that we have on the issue of legislation. So we'll start with a really complex one, but I think it's probably the right one to start at to give you a feel for working through the issue and working through the balloting process. So we'll start with that one. I do want to introduce in advance Kieran Manning. So you'll be familiar with Anne and Cathal at the table here. Kieran Manning is an electoral specialist. He's one of the experts in the country in terms of working through electoral processes. So he'll work with us and guide us throughout the day in terms of the process. And he'll say a few words in a few minutes, but we're really glad to have Kieran working with us today. So look, that's it from me in summary. I think we're at the verge of something very special. We've a bit more work to do before we get there, but I'm confident having worked with you all over the past 7 months, we will get there. So look, best of luck, enjoy the journey, and I'll pass you across to Colin now. Thank you very much. Sure, of course. No problem. Sorry, we just get the mic is not working. No.
Meeting, the Sunday evening, I switched on the 9 p.m. RTE News, and there was a report on the Citizens' Assembly, very brief, saying that the Citizens' Assembly had moved to decriminalise drugs. Now, that was followed by a very brief interview by a member validating that report. This report wasn't corrected or clarified. Now, I have absolutely no problem with any decision that this Assembly comes to with regard to drugs, provided it's arrived at in a transparent and democratic manner. But I have to say, at this point, I'm very concerned as to the real purpose of our being here. I'm wondering, have we actually been wasting our time, energy, and taxpayers' money? Thank you very much.
No, thank you. And look, I think you do express a reasonable concern. I'll say a couple of things just to you in response. Is one, this is all in your hands today. This is in your hands to decide where this goes or where this doesn't go or what recommendations you make. There is being, and I said this at the first Assembly meeting, there'll be a lot of commentary in parallel. And the challenge for us is to stay focused within our process. And there'll be a lot of views expressed and a lot of people trying to influence where this process goes. But this is your process throughout today. So I will say that to you, just remain focused. It's in your hands today. There will be, not just today, but throughout the last 7 months, there's a lot of commentary about where this goes or where people are trying to influence it to go. So just remain confident on that one. But look, and thanks, and you've expressed a reasonable concern, and thank you for saying it. Okay.
I too would like to raise a point. I would like to support Maura, and I would also like to say that to me, this has been a managed assembly towards a pre-decided outcome. It is not credible that this ballot represents the submissions of the assembly. This ballot does, however, reflect the government plan reducing harm, promoting recovery. I cannot support such an undemocratic and non-transparent process.
Helen, I disagree entirely with you, and I think you've made some very unsubstantiated claims there, which I don't believe is reflective of the room whatsoever. So your comment is made, it's noted, I'm going to move on. Thank you very much. Colin.